Hi, my name is Jade. I'm predominantly a lurker over here on Booktube because I mostly post over on Booktok, and however, I've been receiving requests for the last year, and it's something I've been wanting to do myself anyway, which is to compile some of my videos and post it over here as one, because for the last year at least, I've been doing an in-depth literary analysis / dissection of popular series. And for this particular video, I'm compiling all my videos, the mini clips of me doing a literary analysis of the Hunger Games prequel, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I figured it was a great timing with the movie coming out soon to compile that and post it in one place, because it's starting to get buried in my feed because I did that earlier in the year, in the spring, and I have a lot of videos since then. I just wanted to let you know though that since they're coming over from TikTok, they will still be the title cards. So it's going to tell you what chapters I'm more specifically talking about. But also, if you have not seen my videos, the way that I do my literary analysis is that I'm actively reading the books. And as I'm actively reading, I'm just talking as I'm reading and nitpicking and peeling back the layers. I'm talking about the characters and their potential motivations and doing a little bit of a psychoanalysis of them. I'm talking about Susan Collins, her style of craft and writing. I'm talking about, her symbolisms and her motifs and the potential other things that you can compare it to in real life. I'm comparing and contrasting with the original trilogy. So yeah, I hope that you enjoy this and check back into this channel because I do plan on posting some of the other books I've done an analysis for, and I would appreciate any likes and comments to ask, suggestions too of what books you would love me to do an analysis for going in the forward. So if you have not seen or been following along, I've been posting videos of me doing a dissection / literary analysis of the original Hunger Games series, and I am now moving on to the prequel, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Just like with the other books, I will be giving my analysis / thoughts that come to mind as I'm actively reading the book. However, unlike the others, I've only read this one other time, and that was back in 2020 when it first came out. Also, I think I'm one of the few people that genuinely enjoyed this book, so I'm hoping that this analysis might change people's minds about it, because I would like to preface this series by saying I think Susan Collins purposely chose to write about Snow's origins rather than say about Finnick or Hamish's games, because the latter would have been what the Capitol chose, and they would have reaped the monetary value of putting out more entertaining games when the games weren't the purpose of the original trilogy. The games themselves actually took up less than a third of each book, and you're going to see that pattern repeating in the prequel series, where the actual games themselves take up so much less time than the build-up and the aftermath of them. But I should probably stop talking and just get into it. Now, there's a reason why the book opens with a bunch of quotes from Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and even Mary Shelley. And that's because the previous trilogy was focusing about war and the right and wrong and the repercussions and everything that comes along with it. This book is more like a philosophical glance, look, interpretation of humanity. Now, the opening paragraph, the very first paragraph, shows us that this is exactly the Snow we thought we knew, but also not. That he does live in a penthouse that comes from the noble family of Snow. However, they are poorer than some of the scum of the districts, that he is barely scraping by, barely has enough to eat, just like the food motif in the original trilogy. However, Katniss had the skill to go get food. He is living on his wits. Also, just in the first page alone, we're seeing that appearances mean the most to Snow. And we saw hints of that in the original trilogy, that whatever the image you put forth is more powerful and means more than what is actually happening behind the mask. Snow basically lives behind the fake it till you make it. Also, we meet Tigress, who we met originally in the final book of the trilogy. However, we learn that she is Snow's cousin and that they're actually very close, which makes it so much more fascinating that she was fine with Katniss announcing that she's gonna kill Snow. The fascinating thing about Snow is that he's disgusted with the thought that Tigress could be potentially selling herself in order to get him a shirt for the reaping, yet he's not disgusted enough to actually do anything about it because he benefits from it. He's more so worried about the appearances of their house if that occurs. When Snow's talking about food, because obviously food is still a motif in this series, he says, what a luxury would be to toss it in the trash without a second thought. What a luxury trash would be. And it made me think of something that Plutarch said at the end of Mockingjay, which is that how fickle humans' mind, memories can be, that they're vowed to never do this again, yet we will do it again. And basically, made me think of how the Capitol is completely different to this, that they completely forgot about the hard days and what it was like to have nothing and turned into a wasteful society. So yeah, chapter 1 is rather long. Chapter is 23 pages and there is a lot for me to say, so this is going to be part 2 of chapter 1. Once again, Susan Collins is talking about war, using it as almost a motif here, and she's showing that it's been 10 years And yet you can still see the aftermath of the war with like the piles of rubble just sitting on the side of the road and like the buildings still in disrepair. That sometimes the getting past and repairing and reestablishing your society following a war takes up more time than the war itself. Which also made me think of this quote that Finnick had in Mockingjay, where he says it takes 10 times as long to piece yourself back together than it does to fall apart, which he was just talking about like Katniss's mental health, but it fits here too. So on page 14, Snow basically is saying that he views the Hunger Games as a way, as a reminder to avoid complacency and forgetting the reason behind the war and the potential of repeating history. Wait, how did I not catch this the first time? Reaping Day occurs on July 4th. And this is important because this is a dystopian America. Already we're seeing Snow use roses and the scent of roses to mask, like right now, the scent of potatoes and dead marigolds that dyed his shirt, but it's to mask his true self. Already we're seeing that the Hunger Games are not the same as what we know them as. That they're still trying to figure things out and trying to make them a more meaningful experience. Their words, not mine. Okay, this reread is interesting because I thought for some reason that Lucy Gray Bard was a bigger influence of why the Hunger Games became a bigger show, a bigger production, when in actuality, I think Snow had more of an influence of that because he's already living that lifestyle. Like, he's already acting as if he has more shirts and less worries in his life, when in actuality, that is not the case. And he's once again reminding me of Jay Gatsby. I made this comparison in the trilogy, but like, both these men put on this whole illusion, this whole show of what they think the rest of society wants to see them as, hiding their true selves and their true problem. Love seeing the dynamic of old money versus new money being introduced in the story, which is very reminiscent of, say, like, you know, turn of the century when British lords were failing and they would have to marry American heiresses just to survive. We're seeing this very interesting manipulative tactic from Snow with Shannis, and it's going between like disdain and camaraderie. It's like, do you like me or do you hate me? Is that a compliment or a backhanded one? And it just kind of like lures the other person in because they don't know where they stand, and it makes them like want it more, I feel like. We're being introduced to part of the conflict, which is that potentially there are going to be taxes put on his apartment and that he could be evicted. He is living on a thread, and if he doesn't succeed, his entire life could be swept out from underneath his feet. Also, his values are very interesting because he thinks it would be nicer to just toss his grandmother out the window and die quickly than to be disgraced. Just like with Hamish and the other victors, we're seeing the adults here in the capital turning to drugs and alcohol as a way to deal with the PTSD of, in their case, the war. This one line tells us so much about Snow. The District 12, the smallest district, the joke district, with its stunted, joint-swelling kids that always died in the first 5 minutes. And not only that, but the girl. It's showing us not only is Snow an elitist and misogynist, but it also is showing us that he is not asking why are these kids stunted or joint swollen. With Shannis being upset that he got paired as a mentor to District 2, and Snow's like, what's wrong? That's pick of the litter. He goes, you forget that I was part of the litter. And Snow is thinking, like, what's wrong with him? He's been here in the capital with all these privileges. And Shannis is, says, like, my father probably did on purpose to get my mind straight, showing that Shannis is acknowledging that it's not fair that they have to go through the, Hunger Games because of where they lived. And he got lucky that his family was able to buy their way out of that. By chapter 2, I am 2 pages into chapter 2 and I have all these videos, but we're seeing what is motivating Snow, and it's approval and acceptance. Every action he does is geared towards approval, acceptance, and appearance. So the Treaty of Treason lays out the Hunger Games and how it's young district lives taken for young capital lives have been lost. But I guarantee you by the time we get to Katniss, the number probably has far surpassed, because there's 24 district tributes every year and only one winner. And so it's, how far is that, how's that justice? And like, how far are you going to go above and beyond the eye for an eye? We're already starting to see signs of Lucy unknowingly planting seeds of change with, like, him acknowledging that his should be choosing such festive attire for the darkest event of the year, becoming what we know the Hunger Games as, festivities in the capital, at least. Me, I think Lucy Gray Bard reminds me more of Peeta than Katniss, because she knows how to put on a performance. She knows how to manipulate the crowd to see her how she wants them to see her, and it's working because obviously the other students are eating it up, the other capital students. Once again, we're getting a glimpse at Snow's true personality because he's thinking, what's the repercussions of landing Lucy Gray Bard? She was a gift. He knew it and he must treat her as such, but how best to exploit her show-stopping entrance, showing that he recognizes that sometimes opportunities land in his lap and he must, not waste it, that he'll have to make the person think that they are a gift, that they're amazing, but really he's thinking of how can he use them to his benefit. They're not humans to him, they're just pieces on a board. Once again, Snow talks about food and knowing hunger. However, his is different than Katniss. Katniss at least, grows, trades, and hunts for food and is limited by the seasons and the availability. But she was hungry and then went and got the actual item herself. Whereas Snow says, no one ever let me have enough. Thinking he's entitled to this basic need, and instead of going straight to the source, he'd rather manipulate other people to then give him the food. Also, we're seeing Snow kind of abuse a government benefit by providing food at their schools for him. But when he becomes, gains power, he doesn't extend that to others. So I'm in the midst of rereading the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and doing a literary analysis, but this video is going to be a little bit different than my others because I just want to talk about the title and the cover of this book because I was just rereading our first introduction to Lucy Gray Bard and it made me think in my head of a painting of a bird and a snake. And I tried to Google it and I didn't get the one I was thinking of, but I got one that's even better. It is called Mockingbird and Rattlesnake by John James Audubon. Now, Audubon is a naturalist from Pennsylvania. I know this because I took an elementary school field trip to his house. But Pennsylvania falls in the area of District 12. But also, if you look at the painting, it is a rattlesnake constricting and then hiding its way within the flowery home of the mockingbirds before attacking them. And I think it perfectly represents the entirety of this book and the other series. The Hunger Games themselves is having a snake hiding within your home, slowly constricting and poisoning. Snow also, how he will subtly poison friend and foe. And also Lucy Gray Bard, because when we first meet her, she is wearing a rainbow colored dress, standing out look at me, but then subtly slides a snake into the dress of a girl, a rival girl, showing that she would rather do a subtle retribution than create a fight, create a war, which also represents that, the capital would rather constrict the districts and subtly poison them rather than face another war. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of rambling. There's so much more I could probably talk about. But yeah, it's just interesting to think when you first read this book, you probably think, oh, the songbird is Lucy Gray and the snake is obviously Snow. But I think there's just so much more to it than just that because Lucy's not exactly a 100% good person, which makes her real. And I love that. But yeah, check in with my other videos. I'm going to be rambling and talking about a lot of other in-depth analysis of this book. Now, I forgot to say this in the other video, but the POV has changed. In the original Hunger Games trilogy, it is in first-person narrative. So we're getting Katniss's inner thoughts and feelings because it's being told as if she's telling the story. Whereas in the prequel, it is in third-person limited. So it's as if a narrator's telling us, but we're only following Snow. So we're only getting Snow's inner thoughts and feelings, none of the other characters. However, I think the point is to take a step back, to put a little bit more psychic distance between us and Snow, because the point is to be empathetic with him, not sympathetic. Once again, we're getting another seedling of an idea that will flourish into how we know the Hunger Games as, from the original trilogy, and it's Tigris convincing him that he should treat her, aka Lucy, not as a condemned prisoner, but as a guest, which is how they treat the tributes in the original trilogy. This is a manipulation tactic to, yes, gain trust from the tributes, but it's also to make the tributes, one, think that maybe if they accept the offered hand, they stand a chance of convincing their future killers, because the capital here, it's a killer, of keeping them alive, but it's also for the capital to keep peace, to keep them from raging against their cage, to give them a false sense of security. Because it's, more palatable to have the person walk to their death calmly rather than have them yelling and screaming. Snow's first impression of seeing the tributes being dragged out of the cart, meant for livestock, not humans, and the smell of it causes him to feel a wave of pity and revulsion, which is why he then tries to mask the smell by beautifying them up, by making them look, like celebrities and less like children being sent to slaughter. And another seedling planted of them being what is he gonna do? They're gonna kill us anyway. And Lucy Gray saying, not to us, maybe. You got family back home. Someone they could punish there. At least back in the day, they didn't mask or hide or put an illusion of what they were really doing, because they literally put the kids in the monkey cage of a zoo. And capital kids stood on the other side of the bars and looked at them and watched at them and gawked at them and pointed. Because that's what the tributes are. Now he was trapped and on display for the first time, appreciating the animals' inability to hide. You're only sympathetic for the animals, not for the other humans in this cage with you? Once again, like I said, Snow's motivations is geared towards acceptance and appearances, and right now the news is there capturing him in this cage with the other tributes, and he is worried how this is going to affect him and his standing with the others, the appearances of it. The scary thing about this interaction between Lucy, Snow, and the children on the other side of the cage is that parents are going, oh, as the children interact, they're letting the kids interact with her, and they seem so civil, yet they are ignoring willfully the bar separating them. Okay, people may not like this, but I like that Snow and Katniss are similar in one sense, where they think that others are thinking the same way that they do. That Snow is annoyed that, like, he's like, what's Shane is trying to do, one up me? Whereas, like, no, he's just being kind. And it's the same way that Katniss is like, oh, obviously Peeta's out to try to kill me because that's what she's thinking about, when he's not. Oh, Seamus is just such a good person. And I know I'm probably saying that wrong, and I don't care at this point. I don't care what his name's supposed to sound like. But he, like, brightens when he sees Snow, because he just sees the good in everyone. He expects everyone to be good just like him, and Snow's not. This interaction between Seamus and the little, like, girl from the Capitol is so heartbreaking, because the little girl goes over and points to the sign. It says, please don't feed the animals. They're not animals though, says Seamus. They're kids just like you and me. They're not like me, the little girl protested. They're district. That's why they belong in a cage. And it's so heartbreaking because she's believing what she's taught to believe. But Seamus originally came from District 2, and he knows that we're not built differently. We're all humans. We're all flesh and blood. Whereas Seamus is seeing the inhumanity of this situation, Snow is looking at it and goes, the zoo was his show, and he and Lucy were the stars. Like, and here's another seed planted that's going to affect the future of the Hunger Games. It's when Lucy goes, you know, Mr. Reporter, what might be nice if anybody had food to spare, they might bring it down to the zoo. No fun watching the games if we're all too weak to fight, don't you think? So throughout the book, Snow gets numerous opportunities to change, to become a better person, to alter the way he thinks. And one of these moments is right here, where he says he felt embarrassed. Here in the relative privacy of the corner, he realized for the first time she would be dead in a few days. Well, of course he always known that, but he had thought about her more as a contender, his filly in a race, his dog in a fight. The more he treated her as something special, the more she became human. I do like, though, that Lucy's the one person that kind of starts getting Snow to open up, to kind of put down the mask that he puts up between him and the rest of society, that he admits, like, oh, I don't really have that much food at home. That's not the case in the Capitol, that we had plenty of food. But I wonder if he's only opening up because he does know in the back of his head that she's going to die in a couple days, so what does it matter? This is very telling. When Snow thinks bombs and blood, that was how the rebels had killed his mother. He wondered if they had killed Lucy Gray's too. And he's thinking, like, oh, the rebels did it, not the war itself, not potentially his neighbors, his father. Seamus's relationship with his tribute is different than any others because he's not seen as a lifeline as his mentor. No, he's also from District 2. That was his classmates. He knew him. They both know each other. And they both recognize that Seamus got lucky that his family had enough money to buy their way into the Capitol. That they got to buy their way out of living through the horror year after year of waiting for your name to be called, then be called, and then be thrown into a train and thrown into a zoo and told to kill these other kids. And Seamus recognizes that and recognizes the unfairness of it. I think Suzanne Collins does a brilliant job with Snow as a character because he's not a 100% evil villain. No, he's human. And you see the things that have been motivating him, how tough his life had been and what he's working towards, and you understand. But then you're reminded what an asshole he is with, like, little lines like, well, I can't trade Lucy Gray. Besides, the poor thing's already attached to me. Sir. Immediately, we see the true nature of Seamus because he answers, I shouldn't have asked. I never even considered I might be making things difficult for you. He's always thinking of others. He is selfless, whereas Snow is selfish. And it's similar to how, like, Gale and Peeta were supposed to represent polar opposites, how Gale was supposed to represent war and Peeta was supposed to represent peace. Seamus and Snow are opposites of each other. They are foils. Okay, I love Lucy Gray, but she's much smarter than what people think, and I think only Snow's grandmother notices it, because when Snow tries to defend her, being like, she's the only one that, protected me when I was in the back of the truck, his grandmother says, would she have bothered if you weren't her mentor? Of course not. She's a wily little thing who began to manipulate you the minute you met. Tread carefully, my boy. That's all I'm saying. And I think that Lucy Gray is both the snake slithering her way in, but disguising herself as the mockingbird, referencing this picture by John James Audubon. I did a whole video about it. Go check it out. When Tiger says it was disturbing to see you there as well, talking about the kids in the zoo cage, it made me realize why the Academy was annoyed at him. It wasn't because they were afraid that he was endangered. It was because of the optics. They were afraid of how others would see a Capitol kid in the same cage as a district kid, noticing that there's not much difference to them and how easily the, roles could be reversed. Once again, we're seeing the food motif with the bread pudding and how Snow's excited about it, but Tigers took the stale bread that her employer wanted her to throw out, wasting it. Once again, seeing the divide between those who have enough that they will waste food with those who do not and will find a way to use any scrap to make it into something. So their history teacher has them wondering what they should do to improve, viewership of the games. And he says, if history teaches you anything, it's how to make the unwilling comply. Then Shayna says, before we talk about making people watch, shouldn't we begin with the question of whether or not watching is the right thing to do? Which then makes me think of the bystander effect. Oh God, I know her first name's Kitty. That whole thing was debunked, but it's a psychological theory where people would stand and watch because they assume someone else is handling the issue. And instead they become complicit with the murder. Now, the book opened with quotes by famous philosophers, and we're seeing it being played out here in this chapter, in chapter 6, because they're arguing, how do we make people watch? Well, the one kid argues, let's make it punitive. Let's make it against the law. We'll execute anyone in the districts who don't watch, and anyone in the capital would be, excommunicated to the district. Which that then makes the districts other. It makes it a punishment for the capital. It's so heartbreaking to see Seamus being the voice of reason, the voice of morality, and others kind of edging close. And he's like, yes. And they're like, no. Like, why should it matter? And he's like, I think the districts care. And he goes, they don't care about anything. Why should I care? What do I get out of this game? Which reiterates my theory, which is that humans at their core are inherently selfish. Even when we're doing a selfless act, there is a core selfishness that is motivating it. Here's another glimpse at Lucy being very smart. She's like, why would I sing at the interview? It's not like I'm going to get anything out of it. We're going to go straight to the games. It's not like the Capitol is going to bring me any food the next day. Once again, we're getting more seedlings to the future of the games, how it's developing into what we know. Because, the head game maker was inspired by Shayna's giving sandwiches. And she goes, maybe we can get more people involved by giving them the opportunity to send food to the tributes. And then the other kid goes, yeah, and Snow said that we should place bets. I would be more willing to send food if I could place a bet on a winner. I don't know how to feel about this great line said by the head game maker, because she says, what young brains lack in experience, they sometimes make up for in idealism. Nothing seems impossible to them. And then we learn that the dean, the one that is like Snow's enemy, was the one that had first came up with the idea of the Hunger Games, and the head game maker's praising him, and she's like, he was only a few years older than you. And the dean, who's drugged out, says it was just theoretical. Snow, him, sighed inwardly. Another group project, another opportunity to compromise his ideas in the name of collaboration. Either have them cut entirely or worse, watered down until they have lost their bite. Another set of mentors sees Snow and they say, sure, we've already fed our tributes. Saying it like, oh yeah, we already fed our pets. They're describing most of the tributes sitting closer to the bars with their hands outstretched through the bars, waiting for other kids usually to drop food into their hands, and then they start doing things to get the attention of the kids and the cameras. A limber little girl from District 9 did a back handspring when she received the bread roll. The boy from District 7 made a good show juggling 3 walnuts. Bread and circuses. I guess, but at the same time I agree with Lucy. Arachne was playing with fire by taunting her tribute with food. Refusing to give it to her as she, like, you have to listen to me lecture you. And then when she reaches for it, she holds it back. And she's taunting and not realizing when the girl grabs her arm and then slits her throat with her knife. And everyone's mad about it, but this is what you wanted. You wanted kids to kill other kids, but only if the kids aren't capital kids. We're getting a great glimpse of Snow's true character because he doesn't do anything selflessly. everything is selfish and is motivated by right now his, appearance. And that's why he helps Arachne. It's because he can't be caught on camera cringing away. Terror is a private thing, not a public display. And immediately after, we get a great glimpse at Seamus' true character because he's the foil to Snow. While everyone is focusing on the dead Capitol girl and the injured Capitol citizens, he's sitting by the dead body of the district girl that was shot because, she was the one that killed the Capitol girl. But he's mourning her and sprinkling something over her body. By the way, if you notice, a lot of the districts name their kids referring to what their district does. But you also see it with the Capitol. They honor and idolize ancient Greek and Roman civilization, so a lot of their names reflect that. By the way, I love the subtlety of showing how important food is to Snow too, because he actually takes the time to note exactly what he gets for breakfast, lunch, and dinner pretty much every day. Here's the thing, no one likes the Hunger Games, no one involved except for maybe Dr. Gall, but everyone thinks she's a mad scientist. Like, she is just barely hanging on to a thread of sanity. And I think that's where the danger is that they've given her too much leeway because no one wants to be associated or get involved with the Hunger Games. And that's why she develops things like these weird snakes that attack the student. Goddamn Dr. Gall, once again coming in with like a really interesting line. What are lies but attempts to conceal some sort of weakness? We're getting a very interesting introspective moment from Snow because he's wondering how he's supposed to handle the districts. Like, Shayna says that the Capitol is supposed to protect them too, not just Capitol citizens. And he's thinking, how am I supposed to come to terms with the people who were just recently my enemy? But also he's thinking, if the people who are supposed to protect you played so fast and loose with your life, then how do you survive? Not by trusting them, that was for sure. And if you couldn't trust them, who could you trust? And it's a little ironic because the version of the Capitol that we know in the original trilogy says they're protecting the districts. Like, that's why they have a fence around, District 12, but yet they play fast and loose with their lives. I love this slight parallel between the district and the Capitals because they're both playing in their own version of the Hunger Games and they don't realize it, or at least they're willfully ignoring the similarities, because we've watched so far two of the Capitol mentors experience things that would have typically happened in the Hunger Games. We watched one be attacked by a genetically modified creature. We watched another be murdered by another kid. Oh, the slight irony of this sentence. If he didn't find a way to feed her, she'd be dead before the Hunger Games even begin. In a previous video, I talked about how Dr. Gall is allowed to get away with a lot because it doesn't seem like anyone wants to be truly involved with the Hunger Games. But we're seeing that it all kind of makes sense with the way that she interacts with her rabbit mutts and her snakes, that she views animals the same way that she views these kids. She doesn't really have empathy for them. She just sees them as a way to further a scientific discovery or entertainment. Who knows with that mad scientist brain of hers. And I think Dr. Gall is supposed to be coded to be similar to Joseph Mengele, the doctor who would experiment on inmates in concentration camps, because I'm getting a very similar vibe from the two. I love this small detail of when he's talking on the phone with one of his classmates, he can hear through the phone her slurping a drink and the ice clinking, because it's showing that she has enough food that she can be casually drinking something while talking. Meanwhile, every time we see him eating or drinking something, his entire focus is on the food because he does not have enough. Like, he barely comprehends what's going on around him. We're starting to see that the Hunger Games and even Dr. Gall are beginning to influence some of these students, because there's one classmate, after he tells her that I don't know how many of our tributes are going to make it because they're not being fed, she says, well, that's not fair. It's like telling you to do an experiment with broken equipment, equating hungry humans with broken equipment. I'm so mad at this president, but I think he does influence Snow because he's, is using Arachne's funeral to further installing fear in at least the Capitol when he says, we are here to mourn another victim of the criminal rebellion that yet besieges us. That is not what happened, nor is it happening. Then Dr. Gall says, when one of ours is hit, we hit back twice as hard, which is something I feel like Gale would say. In the previous chapter, Snow thinks about how the Capitol is supposed to protect them, but they play fast and loose with their lives. And you're seeing that yet again when they're telling the mentors that they're going to be giving a tour to the tributes of the arena, and it's going to be televised. And they say, don't worry, they're going to be handcuffs and there's going to be sharpshooters. But none of the mentors say anything because they don't want to seem like cowards. Basically, there's nothing very different between the capital and the district kids. They're very similar, and the adults only care about the optics and their grander schemes, not caring about any of these kids' lives, just like with Katniss and Peeta. And if you're confused by what I meant when I said just like with Katniss and Peeta, in my previous videos I talked about how even the adults in their lives are supposed to be looking out for them, like Haymitch and Cinna. They still manipulate and use these kids to further the rebellion, not caring about the long-term repercussions, diminishing, at least for themselves, the potential risks to these kids' lives, and yet still not involving them in any of the planning. Once again, we're seeing Seamus misinterpret Snow's actions. When Snow takes his food covering for him, he thinks, oh, you know, he's covering for him, what a rebel. No, Snow's doing it for his own selfish reasons. He's doing it for Lucy, who's an extension of himself by this point. So Lucy might be manipulating Snow just a little bit, but in the only way that she can, and that's to make him like her by praising him at times. And right now she, you know, holds his hand when he gives her the food and squeezes it. The slight moment of intimacy, as he describes it, to then motivate him as her mentor to want to keep her alive. When the bomb goes off, I have to keep reading to find out if we know who planted it. If it was, I have a theory that it could be Dr. Gall and the president to spark this idea that a rebellion is still present. But Lucy has a moment where she almost turns away from Snow, giving a chance to run away. But then when she goes back to save him, only he is taken away for medical care while she is thrown to the ground with a gun pointed to her by the peacekeepers. And that moment means a lot because they are both just kids that experienced a bombing. There is nothing different between the two of them, yet he gets help and she is deemed nothing. And this is also telling that it's a compliment from the grandmother to deem Lucy that I guess she's not really district. That being considered district is a negative thing. Now, I'm really thinking that it's the president, Dr. Gall, set up these bombs because people didn't care about the Hunger Games and they need to revitalize it, remind everyone why these games are important. And if there's a bombing, which caused, some district kids to die, but also capital kids, this is the reason why we're doing the Hunger Games. And then we see Snow only care and ask about his classmates, not the other tributes. And when he asks about the mentor for the boy District 12, he learns that the District 12 boy covered her with his body during the bombing, and the grandma writes it off, not acknowledging the risk that this kid put to his own life to protect her when he had no reason to. And then the grandmother says this line, "It's just the kind of story that catches fire." And I wonder if that stuck with Snow and he didn't think about it until it came back up with Katniss. And to reiterate how they only see these kids, like the tributes, as animals. Oh, no. They don't have doctors taking care of their burns and all that. No. A veterinarian is. What's worse about these funerals, because we've had 2 so far, is the way that they parade the tribute dead bodies, the district kids' dead bodies. They're just thrown over horses or strung up. They're kids. And then we get to a scene where their mentors are supposed to meet back up with the tributes a couple days later, and one of the mentors is bemoaning that they should bring in another district kid for her to mentor. So it's interesting that Snow is annoyed with himself, diminishing the fact that, Lucy saved his life and he's repaying her with a sandwich and 2 cookies. But food equals life. And like we saw that with Katniss. When Peeta gave her the bread, it was nothing, but it saved her life. And Lucy's not really getting any food from the capital. I can't tell if Lucy is manipulating Snow because I think she is clever enough to do it. But her saying, "You and your friend Seamus, you 2 acted like we were human beings." However, Seamus is the only one that actually looks at them as human beings. Snow sees them as pieces on a board. How can I manipulate them to benefit me? The true villain in this book is Dr. Gall, because while all the other adults are complicit and encourage and allow her to do whatever she wants, they at least have some reservations. We get hints of some of them being uncomfortable with the games and all these actions going forward. Not her. She is enjoying it, and I have yet to see a motivation. What is making her want to do this? Why? What is the thing? Because it's not revenge. It's just pure enjoyment for her, it seems like. Just like how PETA was the voice for peace, Shanus is the voice for humanity. Because when Dr. Gall says that's our right, he says, no, it isn't. I don't care what you say. You've no right to starve people, to punish them for no reason. No right to take away their life and freedom. Those are things everyone is born with, and they're not yours for the taking. Winning a war doesn't give you that right. Having more weapons doesn't give you that right. Being from the capital doesn't give you that right. Nothing does. This whole scene where Shanus is confronting Dr. Gall, but yet he is unable to leave the room because they have physically locked them in it, is showing that they are unable to leave the system, that they are also trapped within this system. And it made me think of a quote from Hermione fan fiction by the same author who wrote Manacle, but it's her new one, The Let the Dark In. She has a line that says, he wears his gilded cage so convincingly, acting as if he had picked it out himself. And that is exactly what the capital citizens are. They are equally trapped within a cage, however they have convinced themselves that they are not. Dr. Gall saying this line, even after your experience in the arena, further proves to me that she does not care if they're district or capital kids. She's gonna fuck with them either way. And showing that there is no difference. That they have deluded themselves, the capital kids, and thinking that they're not part of the Hunger Games, but they are. This entire book is a philosophical discussion. It is filled with so many scenes where they are sitting down having philosophical discussions. And once again, Dr. Gall is giving a scenario where she's saying that the war is never going to end. It's going to be a constant. It's going to ebb and flow. So what's our goal? And none of the students could come up with an answer, but Snow says control. He thinks that they should have total control, strict laws, and they should have the upper hand, that they should be the victor rather than the defeated, not realizing that part of the problem is that it's they versus them, the district versus the capital, and this is only going to further entrench this belief. Suzanne Collins is so brilliant because in the very beginning of this chapter, she has Snow asking Lucy if she will be capable of killing someone. She says maybe in self-defense. And then a little bit later, within the same chapter, they're talking about, continuing the Hunger Games, and Shanus is saying that this is decidedly less moral. And another student says, it's not immoral to defend ourselves. To me, in my historical period drama brain, I see Shanus as being like a governess, where he's not quite servants or District 2, but nor is he the family/capital. He is all alone in between, not part of either group. And once again, we get a throwaway line that reminds us of Snow's true character when he talks about adjusting a hot pink rosebud in her hair. It matched the one on his lapel, just in case anyone needed a reminder of who Lucy Gray belonged to. So Snow realizes that her song is a gift. Like, he's going to have all these sponsors, are going to win potentially. Snow's going to land on top, but he is jealous because he recognizes that the song is personal and it's about a lover. And it reminds me a little bit of Gale, just a little of Gale, where like he became jealous, and only because of his jealousy with PETA does he finally make a move. This line, and last but least, District 12 girl, she belongs to Coriolanus Snow, and I know I probably said his name wrong, but it's showing that not only does he see her as an object that he owns, but so does everyone else, proving that she is not a human being. She does not have autonomy. And now we're moving into a different theme, which is love. And we saw love played out in the Hunger Games as being as selfless and sacrificing for it, like with, PETA for Katniss and Katniss for Prim. But here, we are seeing it as being a selfish obsession. Because even Snow recognizes that he has no claim on her heart, yet he didn't like the idea of anyone else having it either. He doesn't love her. He's obsessed with her. He has ownership of her, in his opinion. He is like a child with a toy refusing to share it. Oh, he hates this because he is selfish. He is egotistical, and he has to be the one in control. Snow lands on top, and he hates that they're all complimenting her, all giving her autonomy, no longer looking at him being like, oh, congratulations. No, everyone's now saying to him, aren't you lucky to have gotten her, instead of how lucky is she to have gotten you. Snow is letting his jealousy and bitterness cloud his judgment, and now he is ridiculing Lucy Gray in different aspects of her song. And Tigress is the one to point out that he needs to knock it off. And she says, and try not to look down on people who chose between death and disgrace. Because we saw in the very beginning, to Snow, he would rather choose death than disgracing the family name. When Snow's working on his essay about what he liked about the war. He thinks the security that could only come with power, the ability to control things. Yes, that was what he loved best of all. These become the fundamental building blocks of his character and who he becomes in the original trilogy. Okay, I think we're seeing like another sign or like thing that shows why Snow ended up hating Katniss as much as he did, and it's because of the romance that Peeta and Katniss curated. It is similar enough to what Lucy did, because she got triple the amount of sponsorship gifts, and they're like, why? And it's like, some people say, oh, they love a good love song, and Dr. Gall says, yes, romantic notions, idealistic notions can be very attractive. Shane is so interesting in this moment because he's the only one who is coming in with an experience of experiencing the war in the districts, and he's like, it was terrible, and all of them tried to discredit it, but he also literally has no reservations anymore. He is not holding back the last handful of pages, because he also calls out Dr. Gall, being like, by the way, what was the thing that you liked about the war? And she says, I loved how it proved me right. Also, I love this throwaway line by Suzanne Collins that happens to be where ultra rich, the way Snow had been before the war, but no matter his advantages, Hilarious always seemed to feel oppressed. Poor little rich white boy. We're starting to see that Snow's obsession with Lucy is starting to make him delude himself into thinking that he's in love with her. But if that was Lucy's tactic, props, because it's working, because now he is working twice as hard to make sure she stays alive. What a crazy scenario to be in. No wonder they kept the tribute separate going forward. But to have one apologize, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to kill you, but don't worry, I'm going to avenge your death. Not thinking like, maybe we shouldn't kill each other. Maybe we can, rebel that way. But they don't think of that because it doesn't seem like it's an option. This is a really big moment. I completely forgot about this. She kisses him while they're still in their school. Like, they're having their final meeting before she enters the arena. They're in the school. And she kisses him in front of everyone, and he lets it happen. He leans into it. And this is big because he's all about appearances. And this is saying a lot because not only is she his tribute who could potentially die in the next couple days, but she's district. And you know how the capital of the district as other. Oh, and I want to quickly talk about misogyny surrounding the games, because it is stemmed from their societal image of, masculinity, femininity, blah, 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 similar to our view of masculinity and femininity, because a couple of his classmates in the previous chapter were complaining that their chances were low because they had a female tribute, forgetting that it was a female tribute that unalived their classmate. She took a knife and used it, probably because there was one, a female tribute that did it, and two, a female mentor that died. So they probably erased it from their mind because, but the likelihood of someone being capable of unaliving another is not dictated by your gender. I literally scoffed reading this line when Snow's telling Tigress, I think she's fallen in love with me. So I think he got things turned around. But it also shows how deeply entrenched he is with their beliefs that, of course, she would fall in love with me because I am a capital citizen and she is a district. Then Snow starts thinking about how him and Tigress have never really had a serious relationship, and the one that she did have ended up falling apart because she never brought him around because they didn't want anyone to know about their real situation. And that, I think, is giving him permission to like Lucy because it doesn't matter. She is lesser than him automatically in his head. Ooh, wait, this spot just hit me, and I didn't even realize it till now. So the District 5 boy tribute passed away overnight before the games even started due to asthma complications, or at least that's what the vet thinks. But what if Lucy had poisoned him, testing the rat poison to see if it works? But also, I think, but I'm not positive, I should double check myself, but I'm not going to, but I think he might be the tribute that was already apologizing to all of them, being like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to kill you, but don't worry, I'll avenge your murders. We're getting more hints at how uncomfortable the Dean is with the Hunger Games and his relationship with the creation of them, hence why he's drugged out most of the time. But during an interview, I realized I think he agreed to the mentorship because it's accomplishing what I think he's hoping it would, which is that the capital students started off with prejudices by interacting with the district kids, they grow an attachment and realize that there's not much difference. And when Lucky calls him out going, wait, you're trying to compare our kids, ours are obviously superior, he then responds with, one look tells you ours has had more food, nicer clothes, and better dental care. Assuming anything more, a physical, mental, or especially a moral superiority would be a mistake. The chapter ends by showing that they had captured Marcus and they are now displaying his body crucified on a pole, still alive in the middle of the arena. And I think it's to show the districts that they cannot stop this. They cannot run from the Hunger Games. it is because of their actions that their kids are going to be treated like this. So once again, we're seeing Snow hover over taking a step towards change, towards thinking differently, because he is horrified by the way that they are presenting Marcus's body. Now, he still equates him with animals because he's saying, like, I wouldn't even want to see a dog, a monkey, or a rat displayed like this. However, to him, he thinks that the whole point of the Hunger Games is that the districts kill each other and the Capitol keeps their hands clean. But by doing this, Dr. Gall has taken a whole new low in retaliation. But yet, we have to wonder, why does he take one step forward but then 3 steps back? The thing with Seamus is so sad because he feels like he has no voice and anything he does has no impact. He can call them all monsters and throw a chair at the screen, yet it's going to do nothing to change this situation. And this thing about Marcus is, I think, the pinnacle of everything that's been brewing. We've been hearing kids start to say, I don't know about this. I don't feel good about this. And then everyone in the room being horrified by seeing Marcus, like, his body on display like that. They're horrified. Yet no one is actually going to do anything to stop what is happening, to stop the Hunger Games. By the way, I think that's supposed to also parallel the tributes within the Hunger Games, because they could choose to not kill one another, to go against what the Capitol wants them to do, but yet they don't because they don't think it's a choice. It says a lot that the District 7 girl, the one that had been crying since she's gotten to the Capitol, that her mentor couldn't even get her to do the interview, has calmly found a weapon, climbed the pole, and gave Marcus a mercy killing. And I think in part it has to do with that they were all within the cage together, that they all suffered together, and she still sees him as human and deserving of a good, like a clean death and not to suffer. Wait, this just hit me, and I feel like it's very fascinating because she's a District 7 girl that cried the entire time leading up to the games, but then immediately proves herself to be a contender, and is identical to how Joanna Mason played her game. So I wonder if that information got passed down for the generations and she heard the story and knew that's how I'm going to play the game. It's the callousness of all of them shaking Felix's hand, being like, job well done. I know your tribute died from natural causes today, but you did your best. Like, he did nothing. He did nothing. And why are you congratulating him that his tribute died? Snow, like, he's thinking like, oh, how sad, I only have one friend, when like Seamus's mother says like, no, the only person that's his friend is like your cousin Snow, and he's like, only one friend. Is like, dude, you don't have any friends either. You don't really, like, you just use these people, and if anything bad was to happen to you, they wouldn't do anything to help you. But this is also interesting because in the original trilogy, we saw that District 12 wasn't very prone to helping one another, and it had to do because, one, they were afraid of the repercussions, but also, two, they didn't have much like resources to then extend to others. And that makes it interesting with the Capitol that they equally would not be likely to help one another. However, most of them do have the resources to help others. I just want to say before I start this video, I'm like not even halfway, but it's turning into like a chapter per video, and I try so hard to put like multiple chapters within a video, but there's just so much to say. It's so densely filled with like discussions about humanity, but it's done in such an entertaining way where it doesn't feel like it until you go to analyze it. It's interesting that Seamus's mother goes, is he in trouble with the Capitol? And Snow thinks that's interesting that she's more worried about the Capitol than an arena full of armed tributes at this point. I think she sees the true threat of it, that the Capitol actually is more deadly than a bunch of kids from the districts. And that says a lot. Then we get this beautiful sentence that once again shows us Snow's true character and how narcissistic he is, because Seamus's mother's like, oh, this is how I first saw the Capitol at night, and he goes, oh yeah, like it's trying to be polite but not caring, because he's like, my life is on the line, my position's on the line. And then we have this interesting conversation, and like a lot of Snow's thoughts, and he's like, what's with like, you know, the Plymouths taking a like advantage and making it into a tragedy, but then she says like basically friends and family cut them off and no one's going to become friends with them in the Capitol because they still see them as district. But her husband did this in hopes of protecting his son from entering the games, and Snow's like, well, that's ironic. I don't trust Dr. Gall, and I wonder if she's setting Snow up, because I feel like she could have made it easy for Seamus to get in, because she could have stopped him. And I could see her making it easy, but then keeps reiterating to Snow, like, oh, this is your best friend, right? And wants to send him in now. And I think she's hoping that the tributes might kill them, because then, one, she can use them as martyrs against the districts. But also, it would get rid of them because I think she sees them as a threat. Seamus is the obvious threat, but Snow, I think, is because she thinks that he has the charisma and the power to potentially ruin things for her. Like, right now, he's aligned with the Hunger Games, but he could ruin it, and especially because he kissed Lucy, so he's on the fence. And that's why I think later on she sends him to District 12. What makes all of this interesting is that Snow now has first-hand experience of what it is like to be in the games. To feel terrified, to feel like you're being hunted. Yet he doesn't change anything. He digs himself deeper into the Capitol's beliefs. Like I said in the previous video, Seamus feels like he has no voice, that his actions cause nothing to change. So he thinks that the only way to make a true stance, to rebel, is to die in the arena, to make a stand that way. And then Snow points out something that is fundamental not only in their society, but our society, that he has money. You're going to eventually have money and you can make a change that way. Because look at how money has changed your life so far. And it's basically saying that unless you have money, you don't have a voice and you don't have power and you don't have a say over anything. But this moment is also giving us our first true glimpse of what Snow is going to be like as a politician. The way he manipulates and convinces Seamus to leave the arena with him, using his wants and desires and goals and just lying to him at some points. It's interesting that Seamus had been with Marcus's body for quite a while, maybe a couple of hours, but yet the tributes didn't come to attack them until Snow appeared. I don't know what it means, but it's something to think about. Even if Dr. Gall is or is not trying to kill Snow in the arena, it does help her case because right now it's reiterating to Snow that the tributes cannot be trusted, that they will always be out to kill him and the rest of the Capitol unless they squash them and hold them under their thumb. Remember a couple chapters ago when Snow was thinking how the Capitol is supposed to protect them, but yet how you're supposed to trust them when they're playing fast and loose with your lives? And I think it's being reiterated here where hospitals are supposed to be like a safety. You're supposed to trust in them, but yet he doesn't trust them at all after what Gall did to his classmate Clemencia, and he just wants to get away. That seems like a lot to send Snow into the arena to teach him a lesson. However, I could see Dr. Gall being that extreme, but I could also still see her sending him in and hoping that he would die so he wouldn't be a threat in the future. But because he got out, she's trying to twist it into being a lesson, to twist the way he thinks. And especially because like she doesn't want him to ruin the Hunger Games going forward, and she might be afraid that Lucy might be influencing him that way. And right now she wants to keep the Hunger Games because with the Hunger Games she has a lot of power and a lot of fear, so a lot of people fear her and she has a lot of power because of that. Dr. Gall definitely has a negative view on humanity because she says what happened in the arena, that's humanity undressed. The tributes, and you too. How quickly civilization disappears. All your fine manners, education, family background, everything you pride yourself on, stripped away in the blink of an eye, revealing everything you actually are. A boy with a club who beats another boy to death. That's mankind in its natural state. Ooh, what Dr. Gall says, who are human beings? Because who we are determines the type of governing we need. Which is interesting because like Snow with his high level of control is showing that he views humanity at its worst, meaning that you need to oppress them in order to keep like a semblance of civility. Whereas if you view them at their best, you would have a democracy, thinking that they should have a say. Okay, now I'm getting the impression that Dr. Gall is trying to groom him. Maybe this was a test. If he died, then it's not a problem. But if he survives, then he's going to view everything, the games and everyone differently. And she's assigning him this paper of like, now I want you to elaborate on control in your next essay. So I think she's grooming him. Shit, which now makes me realize that the arena and the Hunger Games are such a great glimpse and minuscule form of humanity. When you strip everything away, do we attack one another? Not without the pressure to. The majority of the tributes throughout the most of the years, they help one another. I really hate that Snow is more concerned about like his classmate Juno, and he's like, I didn't really like her, but it's not fair on her that I killed her tribute. Not caring about the fact that someone's dead. Her life's not at risk. And it's only when he has to actually see the body again, see what he did, does he feel a little like uncomfortable. But I think it's more like uncomfortable that he was capable of doing it and not that, you know, for the poor kid himself. And once again, Snow is only thinking about himself. He's not thinking about how like terrible the arena is now that he's experienced it. Experience what it's like that you feel this need to kill someone. No, he's only thinking about, oh God, there's a record of it and I don't want this ever to get out and ruin my potential future. The fact that the crowd around Snow sees Jessup has rabies, they all go, he probably brought it from the districts. It's like, no, actually, assholes, he got it here in the capital with you assholes. But also the drones in general are very interesting here, because in the future, we know that the arenas either provide enough food and water for you to hunt and gather, or at least the cornucopia starts off with enough. Unlike, 50th Hunger Game, but at least the cornucopia had food and water. But, here, the only way you're going to get food and water in this arena is through your mentors, and the only way that your mentors can give it to you is if you go out in the open. So do you risk your life in order to get food and water, or do you stay in hiding and just slowly die that way? It's interesting that Suzanne Collins is using rabies in this story, because when you think of rabies, you more commonly think of animals having it. And so it's equating humans with animals that right now, in the way that the society is set up, there's not much difference because of how the society is set up. It's also interesting that his classmate helps him in defeating Jessup, even though it means defeating her own tribute, but she sees that he's a Walking Dead man at this point. But still, if the roles were reversed, Snow wouldn't do that, because he only is thinking about Lucy, because Lucy is an extension of himself and he's selfish. But she thinks that going forward, my tribute's not going to win, and he would have wanted Lucy to win if he didn't. It says a lot that Lucy took the risk to go to Jessup in his final moments, because he could have easily killed her, but she was with him those final moments, easing him into death, and then takes the time to clean the spittle and foam from his face, even in cover of a cloth, even though others could potentially come for her. And it says a lot, because even in the situation where death and chaos is rampage, there is a glimpse of humanity. It is equivalent to the end of Mockingjay, where this meadow might have been a mass grave, but eventually flowers will grow through. I also like the symbolism of this, but I can't remember for sure. I'm not certain if this tribute appeared when the others died, but I like right now where the tribute, whose name is Reaper, comes out of the shadows to watch this final death scene, haunting her. She runs away from him, running away from death. And I like the symbolism of this. The reporter literally is just thinking about himself. He goes, wait, what, you mean the zoo raccoons? What about me? And she goes, didn't you have a question about Jessup? And he goes, oh yeah. And she's like, he was a protector. That's what he would have done instinctively. I don't think he would have ever won the game, because he would have died for Lucy. And the reporter goes, oh, like a dog or something. She goes, no, not like a dog, like a human being. Also, because of the whole reporter and interview aspect being so new, I love that they keep fumbling so many times and struggle, and they get caught off guard. I like that it's not as clean and well-oiled machine as it is that we know in the original trilogy. I didn't talk about this earlier, but it's coming up again. When Seamus and his father introduced that whatever mentor wins, they get to win a free ride at college. So there's incentive for them now too, which is stupid. But the victors, all they win is that they get to keep living. Whereas the mentors get to win a chance at improving their lives. I haven't really talked about craft, writing craft for this book, but Suzanne Collins, in every single one of the chapters in this book, ends with a cliffhanger, but it's a mini rise and fall. So it starts at a high in the beginning of the chapter, then we kind of have a little calming period, and then we get up to another high where you're oh god, I need to keep going. And it's kept within each chapter. But we are also reaching about the midpoint right here, where not only do we have this high of Lucy being within I think 10 tributes left, so we're a little bit more than halfway through the Hunger Games, but also learning that Snow's taxes are due within the next 6 weeks, heightening the tension, the stakes here, and changing the trajectory of his choices going forward. Lucky bringing in his pet parrot and trying to get it to say, hi, handsome, and being come on, say it. It's, I think, supposed to be parallel to what the mentors did, especially during the interviews when they bring their tributes on and they're say something entertaining. I love the Dean pointing out so many great things throughout this book, but right now he's pointing out how this change to the Hunger Games is involving others, especially the Capitals, making it interactive. And he says, do you know what that means? And he goes, no, it means that we're all in the arena, Lucky. Basically showing that by interacting, you can no longer say you're turning a blind eye to what is happening to the Hunger Games. You are complicit. You are involved. The whole thing with the District 7 girl versus the Pact is interesting on so many levels. On one level, it's showing someone who is minding their own business, just trying to survive, versus a group of people who are aggressively trying to improve their chances at life by eliminating the competition. But it's also showing that the mentors and the Capitals are viewing the tributes not as human beings, but as more like dogs in a dogfight. You back them, but you don't feel emotionally attached to them. Not really. It's just it's a weird a relationship. But on top of that, it's also showing that they are like incapable of doing anything within the arena. Like, they're watching it and unable to help or stop it, or at least that's how they feel. So the District 4 girl looks at the District 4 boy, and there's a moment where Snow wonders if she's contemplating sending him down to his death just like the District 7 girl. But I think she probably has a moment like Katniss where she knows that if she wins, she can't go back to her district and face everyone knowing that she killed someone else from her district. Love that the mentors think that they're important because of what they're doing right here. However, it's continuously brought back down when the reporters either forget or mess up their names. Once again, I love that we're seeing the tribute whose name is Reaper acting like a sort of Grim Reaper, where he comes out, wipes light from his eye, and is a little horrified by what he sees, but then moves Tanner and Laminia's body to be next to Bob and Marcus, and then goes back and gets Dill and Sol, lining them up. I feel like there's been a lot of moments where Snow has been given opportunities to give Lucy an upper hand in the games, influencing, almost playing God kind of in the outcome. Like, there are certain things that are out of his control. Like, something could happen, like Jessup could have gotten her. However, it definitely does seem like the game makers going forward too usually have a tribute who they think that they want to win, and they try to aid them as much as they can.